All right, and welcome back. We're going to be looking at, as you can see highlighted there in yellow, Chapter 10.2, Learning Outcome 2. That should say 2 ways, not 2 was, but whatever. Um, there, sorry, that would drive me absolutely crazy. So we're gonna look at how to do that. We're gonna use one method, which is exact interest using the 365-day rule, and then we're gonna use method two, which is the ordinary interest or 360 days rule. So when we look at exact interest, right, if we're looking at exact interest, I'll just use I. Um, this is something that Federal Reserve banks or federal governments use in order to figure out interest or for the time period. So they use what anybody would normally use. They use a 365-day calendar, which makes complete sense. And then the exact days. Right. They don't count the day that you pay. Right. So they just count the exact. So how many days have passed? So they're looking at exact days for you. Um, if you look at ordinary, which I still to this day, I don't understand why they do this because they don't need to. They use still, it's the exact number of days uh, over 360 days. The feeling is this is just much easier for banks to use. It's an old habit that they've done and just kind of continued to use. Um, it really helps the banks more than it helps the customer because it ends up charging you a higher, albeit a very slight increase, but it ends up charging you more interest. Um, and with today's computers and the way things work, there's really no reason that banks can't use exact days, 365 days. And it's not a big deal if you're borrowing a few $1,000s. It becomes a big deal if you're borrowing a few $1,000,000, or if you're borrowing money to buy a home and you're paying that off over a 30-year period. It can add up. That little bit of pennies on pennies can add up quickly, and it's really just not fair to the consumer. All right, let's move this up here. So let's look at method one. Let's look at what this would look like if we borrowed. Sorry, moving some stuff on my kitchen counter here. That's my new office. Isn't that wonderful? Strange days we're living in. So let's imagine that we're going to borrow $50,000, right? So this example that it gives you in the book is on March 4th, Joe Bench borrowed $50,000 at 5% interest. Interest and principal are due on July 6th. What are the interest cost and the maturity value? Now, we can kind of go back and look at all of, how do we find out how many days that is? You can basically just use a calendar. Your book shows you how to do that. But in this case, we're gonna put how do we figure out interest? We know how we figure out our simple interest. Our simple interest is interest over principal times rate times time. And so this is going to be $50,000, right, times 5% interest. And then we know it's going to be 124 days. And we're using the exact method, so it's going to be 365, right? And what this is going to give you when you do this, hold on there, right, is we're going to have 124 divided by 365, and we're going to get this really long number right there. And I'm going to put that off over to the side here just for a second, and then we'll get back to our equation over here. So we know that this number over here is going to be, all right, that number times 0.05 times the 50,000 principal. And we get 804, excuse me. We get $849, and we're going to round that to the nearest cent, 32 cents. And now we want to figure out, okay, well, what is our, right? Because this is our interest. And now we know, okay, our mature value is $50,000 plus $849.32. Right? So we just add those together and we get, I don't know what's going on. There we go. $50,000, $849.32. Okay, that's pretty simple. Same way if we do it the other way, it works out just the same, right? And I'm going to keep that there because I want us to see this number right here. This is our exact interest. We'll call this EI. Okay. And now we're going to look at the ordinary interest. So it's the exact same thing, right? So we're going to do, our interest is going to be, right? So we want to find our interest. Our interest is $50,000 plus, or excuse me, times the 0.05, the 5%, times, we're going to do 124, that doesn't change, over 360. And now we get, we're going to get this, $124 divided by 360, and we get this 3.34444, continuing. Okay. So we're going to multiply that by our 5%, and we're going to multiply that by our principal amount, and that is going to give us $861.11, right? So our interest is going to be $861.11. So we find our maturity value. I'm going to keep this in, let's see. We'll do orange. So our maturity value is going to be our principal plus our interest, and here is our interest right there. So it's going to be $50,000 plus $861, which gives us $50,861.11. This is our ordinary interest. And you can see that in this one, you're going to end up paying more interest in general. And that's good for you if you're loaning the money. It's not so good for you if you're borrowing the money and paying that back. So that's the two methods for calculating simple interest and maturity value. If you have any questions, please give me an email and make sure you're working those problems in McGraw-Hill homework.